George Pickens had another huge day at Cowboys practice, and now we are starting to change our expectations. We'll tell you about him next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back. I am Markquese Mosher. He is Landon McCool, and today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use promo code LOCKEDON to get 10 when you trade 10. Welcome back on today's show. We are discussing the lack of defensive tackle depth for the Cowboys. We're also going to talk about some special teams battles that you need to be keeping an eye on. But Landon, I want to start with this. George Pickens on Tuesday had another incredible practice. He caught a couple touchdowns during the team period. By all accounts, he was absolutely dominant. I know our guy, Joseph Hoyt, said that Pickens has been the most impressive player on both sides of the ball for the Cowboys so far in camp. Should we be changing our expectations on George Pickens going into the 2026 season?
I mean, maybe so, right? Like, I think that we went into this season knowing that we had two talented wide receivers, and I think you and I have had many different conversations about Pickens is an excellent wide receiver too, and Lamb is the guy that's going to be the kind of main focus. And as the offseason's gone on, and as Pickens has continued to just be over the moon incredible in these training camp practices, and obviously now has transferred that same momentum back to Dallas as this was the first practice back in Dallas at the Star. It's hard not to look at the situation and think, man, do we need to kind of recalibrate what we expect Pickens' ceiling to be? Because it just feels like every time you turn around, Dak's throwing a 25-yard strike to Pickens. He's scoring a touchdown. He's getting the ball and he's running through the secondary and scoring. It's just been very, very consistent to the point where you start to wonder, like, maybe we don't realize like what the ceiling is for this guy. And maybe the ceiling can be much, much higher than we even anticipated.
What is the ceiling here? Like, you've been to these practices, you've seen it all. What do you think? Like, what could pick if everything works out the way that maybe we're thinking it could? What is the ceiling here?
I mean, we've been in those practices with like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, and Chris Olave came to the practices, in Oxnard when they did the joint practice with the Saints. I think that George Pickens has been the best wide receiver out of all those guys in these practices so far that I've seen. So does that mean best wide receiver in football is the ceiling that he could achieve? I don't know that that's something I would have put on him before. But the way he's looked in these training camps, I'm certainly not capping him anything lower than that.
I think the other part of this discussion that we have to have is what that means for CeeDee Lamb, because I think there's a natural indication that if you're talking about George Pickens being awesome, it must mean that CeeDee Lamb is failing to live up to the hype, right? Or that CeeDee Lamb is having a bad training camp. I don't necessarily get that vibe, at least from you. Again, you've been out at all these practices. It doesn't seem like it's just Pickens being good and CeeDee Lamb being bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we often kind of get in that, versus mentality. And I don't think that there's really even a competition that's happening between Pickens or Lamb at all. It's like
they almost play different spots at receiver, right?
Yeah. And look, both of these guys are going to get a ton of targets and a ton of opportunities, and both have gotten a ton of those things. And maybe it's just simply that Pickens is the shinier new toy, and the receptions that he's getting are down the field a little bit more, and so they're kind of flashier plays, and CD has kind of more settled into the move the chains workman-like stuff a little bit more, and even though his he's been impressive with the ball in his hands, and he's looked really good out there, maybe it just doesn't pop the way that what Pickens is doing on the field does. I will say that I do think that CeeDee has had some drops at times, so it's not like he's had part of the thing that's been so impressive about Pickens is that he's made big plays and he's also been mostly clean throughout this offseason as well. Like not just like being distracted, but on the field, like you just don't see a ton of drops or snaps where he's losing his snap. So I think that's part of it, but I don't think that we necessarily need to denigrate what CeeDee Lamb has done just because George Pickens has come out here and put up an outstanding trend.
And I've been trying to think of a historical comp for this because whenever you've had like two elite receivers, generally one of them is older, like they're at the back half of their career, like Chris Carter, right? Chris Carter and Randy Moss. When Randy Moss in 1998 was lighting the league on fire, Chris Carter was at a different stage of his career. He was still an awesome player, but you're talking about somebody who wasn't 27 years old like CeeDee Lamb just turned in April, right? It's just so unique to have two players in the primes of their careers like this. And I still think CeeDee Lamb can be an all-pro caliber receiver because whenever he's healthy, he gives you at least 80 yards per game, and we know that Dak Prescott trusts him. Having said that, Pickens is such a unique talent that I wonder if they're just catching lightning in the bottle a little bit with him in a contract year at the absolute peak of his powers in his prime. And that's why we might get the best version of Pickens. I kind of dismissed the idea a few months ago that George Pickens could be the number one receiver on this team. I don't think I'm doing that anymore.
No, you shouldn't. Certainly they've shown you in training camp a version of reality in which George Pickens very much could function as the number one wide receiver on this team. And so I think it's not outside the realm of possibility. And I think you're right. Like, I think that's what makes this conversation beyond 2026 interesting is, well, part of this whole conversation with Pickens has been making him prove it again, making him do it again. But let's say he goes out and he has a wide receiver,
even better year than he had last year.
Yeah, and like he's a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, or maybe he's close to the number 1, or he's leading the league in receiving yards or something like that, right? Like, I do wonder if we won't look at the situation one more time and go, man, that's incredible, but we're going to pay him for top 3 wide receiver money now. Will he consistently produce at that level? Because that's the one area where I still, we just started to get George Pickens consistency. So the idea of George Pickens consistency is still new to me. And so can that consistency expand beyond training camp to multiple regular season NFL games? I think we're going to find that out. But what we won't find out is by the end of the year, if you sign George Pickens to a long-term extension, is that the level of play that you should be and the level of consistency that you should be expecting from George Pickens moving forward? Because I do think CeeDee Lamb, no matter what, like even if he's having kind of a down camp or even versus his own expectations, I do think that he provides you with a level of consistency and a high floor situation no matter what.
Pickens is also just a different type of number 1 receiver than what we're used to right now in the NFL. Look at like the last 5 years where it's been these guys like CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the guys that kind of move all over, who are good route runners that can play in the slot, and that's how they win. We haven't really had one of these 6'3", 6'4" vertical receivers who are the best receiver in the league really since I went back a little bit, like when AJ Green was maybe the best receiver in the league. And maybe that's the comp. And that is, I'm saying this as respectfully as I can to AJ Green, who I think is an unbelievable player, was an unbelievable player for Cincinnati, but it's just some guys are absolute freaks, and George Pickens is one of them. If he can show that kind of consistency, he is a player that I think could get 1,600 yards and average 17 yards per catch and score 14 touchdowns in any given season.
I think the difference to me is that we knew George Pickens was a big vertical receiver who could go down the field, and that's what you traded for. I think the thing that we discovered that has tripled his value, as far as I'm concerned, is that he's a yak receiver too. And I think that's why I really like the Green comparison. And I mean, Julio Jones, again, not to compare him to two of the greatest wide receivers
It's
in
unfair,
history,
but it's really hard to find comps.
There aren't, yes, exactly. There aren't a lot of human beings, there aren't a lot of receivers out there who were specifically skilled in those two skills together. It's a very rare comparison, and I think that's why now that he's putting it together a little bit, he's kind of taking the league a little bit by storm.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys' defensive tackle depth because I am a little concerned. We'll talk about it next. This episode is brought to you by Kalshi. Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who's going to win the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at the end of the season? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Will the Cowboys qualify for the playoffs this season? Right now, they're trading at about a 53% probability, meaning a $100 trade would pay out roughly $173 if they clinch a playoff spot. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use promo code LOCKEDON to get 10 when you trade 10. Kalshi, trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com. This episode is brought to you by Square. Behind so many of the local businesses that people visit every day is Square, a platform designed to help businesses sell, manage, and grow. Whether it's a neighborhood coffee shop, a packed sports bar on game day, or your favorite restaurant, Square brings payments, banking, and more together in one connected system. It helps business owners spend less time managing technology and more time focusing on their customers. Square isn't just a payment processor, it's a complete business platform built to simplify the day-to-day. So if you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. And again, I know for me, there's a coffee shop right down the road for me that uses Square. I'm in and out in seconds. I get rewards every time I use Square. It's unbelievable. Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square and get started today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Landon, I want to talk about the defensive tackle depth in Dallas because Jonathan Bullard has not really practiced at all during training camp. He missed Tuesday's practice as he's dealing with a groin injury. Now, you do have LT Overton, who I thought has looked pretty good in the preseason, but behind Overton, it's pretty shallow. Are you concerned about the lack of veteran defensive tackle depth here?
Well, I'm going to throw in Jay Toya here because I honestly think he's had a very good training camp, and I'm actually way more excited about him than I expected to be, even though I thought this defense was a decent fit for him. I think you've seen him come out here and do the kind of big body run stuffing thing that we expected him to do at his size and kind of fit in here. But I even think you've seen in these last two games him applying pressure during passing downs at times, him just kind of doing more than we've seen him do before. So I think he's a body that you can count on. And I think you're right to be nervous about the Jonathan Bullard situation, because even with Toya, you still need Bullard, the guy that is not on the field. And if you're not going to get him, somebody else has got to step up. I do like what I've seen from some of the down roster guys. And I don't know if they're necessarily an option, but I think, let's talk about the role real quick that we're talking about, right? Because we're not talking about Kenny Clark or Quentin Williams, who are going to be the kind of do-it-all feature.
They're going to be your anchors,
defense.
right?
Yeah, your anchors of your team. Tito is basically kind of the third guy who comes in so you can kind of play these 5-man surface fronts, another big-time run stuffer. He showed you a little bit more than I thought you would get from him as a pass rusher as well.
Very happy with him as a nose tackle.
He had a great training camp. So where we're concerned about is with the role that Jonathan Bullard was filling, which was kind of that fourth guy to come in to be the gritty run defender guy who could play in a couple different spots up and down your line. There are going to be multiple up front, so Bullard is going to be useful as a one technique at time, in some situations all the way out to potentially a 5 technique or like a 4-eye situation. And they just don't have, LT Overton is not quite that guy,
They just don't trust him against the run at all right now.
Well, I think the issue is that, I think you could probably play him a little bit out wide and enjoy some of the run stuff. But you're right. Like, I'm not playing him at like a 3 or like a 2-eye and expecting him to not get completely dug out by guards and centers in the NFL. And so I think that there are some guys a little bit downstream from that I like a little bit that I mentioned. Like, I was a big fan of what I saw from Tommy Dunn, who was number 95. I just thought that he's consistently showed you the ability to kind of play upfield a little bit. Now, again, I liked what I saw from him more as a pass rusher than I saw as a run defender. So I don't know if he's necessarily the best solution there. I also liked a little bit what I saw from Odio Odele, number 96. And I thought he's had some good reps as well. But
you're just talking about a lot of unproven guys, and that's my concern here. I'm fine with having youth, but I would love for them to have, I'm saying a name, not this exact player, but they're the equivalent of like a Brent Urban, who the Cowboys had one year, who's been in the NFL forever. Like a guy that can come in, give you 27 snaps on a moment's notice, probably not going to generate a lot of pressure, but it also isn't going to get you embarrassed out there. I just feel like they need one more 8-year veteran on that defensive line.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come down to exactly like how hurt is Bullard, right? Like, is this something that's going to bleed into the regular season? Because if that's the case, then you need to go out and get a veteran guy. Like, but if you feel like you're just kind of managing him until the regular season, he's mostly okay. I think Bullard is the guy for that. But you're right. Like, if you don't have that, like, that is a role that you're going to need. And again, I like what I saw from Toya. I like what I saw from Overton, but they don't have necessarily the experience to kind of consistently play that role at the level that you want. So it is something that they're going to have to examine.
And I don't think you're going to find guys on the street or via trade at the deadline that give you a lot of juice as pass rushers, because teams just aren't giving those guys away. But I do think you can go out and solve the need to find a guy that could play 1 and 3, that can stop the run, not as a full-time player. This is something that we've struggled with before as Cowboy fans, but a guy that can just come in and give you average rotational snaps. It's not that it's a hard position to replace. I just don't think they have one currently on the roster if Bullard is going to miss time.
Yeah, it's a lot like running back, right? Where this is a position that you probably could fill at any time. I think, it's just about us identifying this right now. Is like, hey, if Bullard is not going to be back anytime soon, you need this role. Like, this is not so that you can just skip by for a couple weeks, especially if you want to be a tough, run stopping defense. You need that extra body who can come in there and kind of spell the top 3 guys, so you can be continuously good throughout the game. So,
well, and what's really funny is, like, they've made moves like bringing in Jordan Phillips and signing Linval Joseph. And a lot of times those guys were asked to be starters, which was just a mistake. But I think coincidentally, it'd be really funny. Like, those guys would be really good fits now with Dallas. Like, come in, give us 20 snaps, and that's it. Just don't kill us. But when you needed those guys to be heavy snap players, it just was never going to work.
Yeah, it's a different kind of role that you're asking them to do, right? It's a difference between being a starter and being a key backup who comes in and you're only relying on for 10 to 15 to 20 snaps.
Yes. All right, let's talk about special teams, because there are a few players right now who are starting on certain packages: kickoff return, kick coverage, punt coverage. And that's a pretty good sign that they're going to be on the 53-man roster. We'll tell you who that might be next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. There are more live events than ever we're seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkouts, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel way harder than it should. And that's why so many fans are turning to Game Time. The app is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help get you to the events that you want to go to without the hassle. I know for me, I'm already looking at the NFL schedule, trying to find a couple games that I want to go to, and Game Time has been so clutch. I love that you can see exactly what your view is going to look like in the seats in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code Locked On for $20 off, and download the Game Time app today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Landon, we got a tweet from Todd Archer on Tuesday night where he said, if special teams determines the final few spots on the roster, here are some who might be considered bubble players who are on first team units. That would be Markquese Bell, Marist Liuafu, James Houston, and Alijah Clark. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a practice, rep, and those things aren't necessarily determined quite yet, but I think it is informative to kind of be tracking this sort of thing to see who's on these units, and because we are getting closer to the end, it certainly has more weight on who's playing where in these special teams units than it did, 2 weeks ago. So I think the name that really stuck out to me there, honestly, more than anyone, is Marist Liuafu, because simply because I have watched this whole situation unfold, and I feel like he's been very up and down, and that the transition has been kind of rocky to outside linebacker. But I certainly can understand the idea of him still being on a rookie deal, him being cheap, him being a little bit versatile, so he could play a little bit, linebacker if you needed him to. But I just feel like, when you look at his situation versus what we've seen from Sam Williams in this training camp, I feel like Sam Williams has been better. And maybe it's a money thing. Maybe it comes down to, Liuafu is cheaper.
I've been starting to put together my 53-man roster prediction for this weekend. And there's not a ton of jobs that are up for grabs, Landon, but I do wonder if there could be a couple surprise. When I say surprise, it's not like they're cutting CeeDee Lamb or anybody like that, but like maybe they pick Marist Liuafu over Shamar James, even though they're technically playing different positions right now. Maybe they feel like, okay, if Barham's going to be our third linebacker, Liuafu we know can slide in there in a moment's notice just to get us through a game. Liuafu is better on special teams. He can also help us out on the edge. And a guy that, we like in Shamar James ends up not making the roster in favor of somebody else who we've been a little bit more disappointed with.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to kind of keep pulling on that thread a little bit, I mean, could Markquese Bell come in and slide in and give you some nickel linebacker snaps instead of Shamar James if you needed him to, right? So,
well, and I was even thinking about Justin Barron. Like, Barron has had a really good camp, but is he a better special teamer than Alijah Clark? I don't know. I mean, my guess is that Clark is better, but can you afford to keep 5-6 safeties on your roster? I don't know. The other part of this we should mention is that with the changes to the practice squad where you could elevate players weekly, maybe a guy like Alijah Clark or I think Marist Liuafu would get to the practice squad, but these guys that are right on the edge, you cut them, you chance it, and if they make it to the practice squad, then you're elevating them early in the season to be on special teams units. And the guys that would be like inactive would be like Camden Brown or Shamar James or players like that.
Well, I could be wrong, and please someone check my math, and if I am, I apologize, but you have to look at like guys like Marist Liuafu who are on literal rookie contracts. Like I don't know that you're going to get a cheaper deal than that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's about the cheapest deal that you can get. So my point being, I don't think you want to cut Marist Liuafu if your plan is to. So I think he specifically, or anybody that is still on a rookie contract, you don't necessarily want to do the kind of cut and
Up
then
and down,
re-sign plan. Yeah, because it's the contract that you're actually cutting, not the player. If you think, the player goes too, but that's ultimately the contract that you have to renegotiate. That's what the actual valuable part. If that's the actual valuable, like meaningful, valuable part of Marist Liuafu versus Sam Williams, then you don't want to like shoot yourself in the foot by cutting his contract. You want to hold on to that contract, and then maybe you cut more of the undrafted free agent guy that's already kind of on a 1-year deal or something like that. So it's a little bit easier to kind of retain the cheapest contract.
Well, and here's the other part is when I've been doing these roster predictions, there's really about 42 players and then 45 if you're counting the 3 specialists, right? Your kicker, your punter, your long snapper. And then the final 7 players are all fairly interchangeable. And most of the time they're just special teams players. And we might like James Houston's pass rushing ability more than Sam Williams. But if they think Sam Williams is a better special teams player, I'm just making this up. We're probably going to keep Sam Williams. I just don't think when you get down to the 50th and 51st player in your roster, they really care all that much about how much you can help us on defense. It's more, okay, what role are you going to fill on special teams in week 1?
Well, I think for me, it's a lot about like, and this is the thing that we always kind of forget to think about. It's about, hey, how do I find a way to keep all these guys, right? Like which one of these guys, if I expose them to the waiver wire, if I cut them, are going to be able to slip through and make it back onto the practice squad, and which ones are going to be claimed by another team or have the opportunity to go sign someplace else. So I think there's a lot of kind of individual calculus that has to get done there as well.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Now on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 YouTube channel on the NFL. And on audio, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with Fabs and Marcus. Yes, that's me. I have to say the whole name. For your second listen, we're getting you ready for your fantasy football drafts, which should be coming up this weekend or next. Make sure you check out on that show. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.